I think of songwriting kind of as this secret library that opens its doors to you at the most random times. And sometimes you have entry for like 5 minutes. Sometimes you have entry for like an hour. And you can explore ideas through there.
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten Davidson, your host and creator of my wellness podcast, Mind the Gaps, where we work on surrendering our typical ways of looking at life to step out of our comfort zone and into our growth zone. Welcome to episode number 23, Music to My Heart, where I'm joined by my good friend and indie pop artist, Goodheart. Goodheart describes her music as evoking a gut punch, heart squeeze feeling. Since childhood, she's been writing songs and translating her world into sound. During university, Goodheart began to produce and perform her songs alongside friends in Toronto, and went on to receive Factor's Artist Development Grant in 2022, and in 2024 received a recording grant from Ontario Art Council. She's since garnered over 50,000 streams on Spotify and over 130,000 views on YouTube. Her sound has been described as an abundance of beautiful pop licks, heartbeat rolling drums, and soaring vocals, all wrapped up in an immaculate production. As Goodheart fell in love with producing, she started to realize the little representation that women have as music producers. Growing up an avid music listener, she didn't see many women who actively produced their songs along with writing them, and she's gone on to self-produce all her own songs. Goodheart believes that songwriting is a cathartic approach to fleshing out feelings, but that it's music producing that gives the song shape. She strives to be known as a singer, songwriter, and producer, capturing honesty and heart through fresh and familiar sounds. Currently, Goodheart is working on her first EP, Blue and Other Colors, set to release in early 2025. You're gonna want to check her out on social media, so you can find her on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Sounds Like Goodheart. You can also find her through her website, goodheartofficial.com. For all things Mind the Gaps, you can find me on Instagram at kirsten.davidson, in addition to my new website, mindthegaps.co. If you like what you hear today, taking a moment to rate and review the podcast episode is always greatly appreciated. We couldn't do this without your support, so thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy. Hi, Lianna. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, Kirsten, thank you so much for having me.
So excited to have you as our first guest of 2025.
Woo! Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Before we jump in, I was thinking we could share how we know each other, because I was realizing we are so cute. Our love story.
Yes, our love story.
Yeah, as we call it. It's funny because I was thinking, the reason Lianna and I know each other is because of music. So we were connected through music. So we went to high school together, and when we were in grade 10, we both loved the same band, Two Door Cinema Club, and went to go see them. My dad took us.
Yes.
And then we were kind of friends through the same class.
Like school friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to continue?
Yeah, you take it away.
Yeah. So we graduated, we went our separate ways, separate schools. And then I remember one day, I think this was a year or two outside of university, I got a text from Kirsten, keeping in mind I haven't really spoken to her since grade 10. And she said, hey, this is really out of the blue, but I just vaguely remember that we have the same taste in music. I have an extra ticket to this concert coming up. Would you want to go with me? And of course I said, well, hell yeah. And so, and that band, which band did we go see? We've been to so many concerts together now.
That was X-Ambassadors.
X-Ambassadors. Yeah. And we have kind of been going to concerts together literally ever since.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're concert buddies now. So yeah,
Concert buddies. Yeah.
that's the story of how I slid in Lianna's DMs, and now we
And it
are
worked.
good friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason I did that was because I saw that you were a musician, and
Yes.
that was in 2021. So shortly after COVID. And so that
Yeah.
was it, because I saw you made music, and I was like, oh, we do like the same type of music, so I feel like
Yeah.
so there it is. Music connects people, and that's what we're
Yeah.
talking about today too.
Yeah. And so does sliding in the DMs when
Yes.
you're when you're bonding over music.
Yeah. So, can you share with us your path to becoming a musician? What was your initial spark, and how did that spark lead to where you are today with music?
Yeah. So I think my journey as a musician started when I was a baby. I obviously don't remember much about it, but my parents tell me that I was singing before I could speak. I would stand up in my crib, I guess, and sing even though I didn't have words.
That's so cute.
Yeah, apparently I could always sing on key. I don't know, it's just how my brain works. So that's kind of where it started, which is weird also because neither of my parents are singers. Nobody in my family really sings. My dad plays a bit of guitar and my mom a bit of piano, but there's not that many musicians in my family or in my bloodline. So it's interesting where that came out of. But I was always singing. And when I was around 6 or 7, I became very obsessed with Hilary Duff. I think that the first CD that I ever bought was the Hilary Duff soundtrack from the Hilary Duff movie. Through that, I learned that I just wanted to write songs and sing them and perform them. So around 6 or 7, I started writing songs, and I have honestly been writing songs ever since. And when I was in about grade 7 or 8, I taught myself guitar. My dad had an old guitar lying around, and I took it and through YouTube videos taught myself how to play guitar. I also did piano lessons briefly, but I loved guitar more. So I really stuck with guitar. And then during high school, I was writing all the time, but I was very scared to show anyone. I didn't know of anyone who really wanted to write songs and perform them the same way that I did. Nobody I was close to, at least, anyways, in high school. And there wasn't any, bands or anything in high school that I knew of. Like, I talked to some of my friends who I met in university, and they seemed to all have gone to high schools where they knew like 2 or 3 of their friends were in bands and different things like that. I didn't really have that in high school. So it wasn't until I got to university that I really started getting a little bit more serious with my music. I ended up putting an ad out on the Toronto musicians Facebook group looking for people to collaborate with. And it was through that I met Mitch, who is my guitarist and longtime friend. We've been working together now for 7 years, which is crazy. So and we started performing together in university. And then I met Connor, who's my drummer, and Ryan, who's my partner, who also plays bass. So we formed a band I think it was around 2020, where the 4 of us all came together. I was playing in some bands before that, but nothing that really stuck that long. And in university, I also met David Matta, who is my sound engineer and mixer. So I feel really fortunate to have met all of these talented, wonderful guys who I get to work with and can collaborate with and be honest with. Yeah, so we started performing. And then during COVID, I really had this goal of having one of my songs be really polished, professional version. And I didn't know how to get there. So I figured, and I didn't have a lot of money to spend because making music it's very expensive. So I ended up teaching myself how to produce through Logic, and I completely fell in love with producing. It's a big part of my journey as a musician. And the first song I ever produced is called Back to You, which you can find on all streaming platforms. That was my very first song.
Such a good one.
Thank you.
You say I have a way of putting words onto a page. It seems just yesterday you left me with no words to say. I'm blown away.
Yeah, and since then, I think I have around 6 or 7 singles out now, and I'm currently in the midst of producing an EP, which is going to be a 5-song EP that's coming out in the next 2 or 3 months now.
And that one's called Blue and Other Colors.
It's about different shades of sadness. That's what the theme of the EP is about.
It makes me think of horses and the rain, and my thoughts carve out a space for you when you're not here. Am I coming through?
Very cool. I've seen some of the behind the scenes
Yeah.
photo selection process for that one.
Yeah, I get Kirsten's opinion on a lot.
We're each other's designers behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That brings me to a question about the name, your artist name, we'll say.
Yes.
So it was a few years ago that you changed it to Goodheart.
Yeah.
And can you tell us about that shift from you being just a solo artist, which you still are, but to then changing the name to Goodheart? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, there were a few reasons why I changed it to Goodheart. I just wanted to say that Goodheart is what my last name means in English. So that's kind of where that name came from. I liked having a separate identity for my music that was separate from who I am. I mean, they're both me, but I like that idea of separation and branding. Really made it easier to work. I also liked that even though I am a solo artist, Goodheart isn't just about me. It's very much still about my band. It's about the people I work with. I didn't want it to just be Lianna because there's so many people, so many good hearts behind Goodheart.
Oh, so cute.
So I just thought that name better represented the projects that we work on together.
I like that. I actually didn't know that about your last name being that's the translation. Can you tell listeners what your last name and your background is?
Yeah, so my last name's Boncore, which is Boncore, and it stands for good heart, Boncore, and it's Italian.
Very cool. Yeah, what a great way to still have it be you, but you in disguise.
Yeah, it's all about branding, baby.
Yes. So when it comes to songwriting, that's pretty amazing that you've been doing it since you were 6.
Yeah.
Not many people can say that. I'm very, very curious. Is there a structure to your process? Does it tend to be lyrics first? Does it tend to be music first? I know that there are some songs that have taken artists 5 years to write, like Leonard Cohen with Hallelujah. And then there's songs that have taken 5 minutes to write. Yeah. And so I'm curious about your process and how this kind of comes to you.
Yeah. My process is that there really isn't any process.
Yes.
I kind of think of songwriting. It sounds weird because people say, oh yeah, things just come to you. But they kind of do. I think of songwriting kind of as a secret library that opens its doors to you at the most random times. And sometimes you have entry for like 5 minutes. Sometimes you have entry for like an hour. And you can explore ideas through there. So there are definitely songs that have taken me 5 minutes to write. Running From You is very much one of those songs. There are songs that reveal themselves in bits and pieces over time. There are songs where I'll get just like a musical phrase with the lyrics that'll come to me at one time, and then the whole rest of the song comes at some point later. Sometimes it's music and lyrics together. Sometimes it's just a phrase. Sometimes it's just a melody or a guitar riff. It really knows no bounds. So I just think it's important to just be open. A lot of my process revolves around being quiet. I find that when I have to write songs or when I'm in the mood to write songs, I really don't consume a lot of media. Like I don't actually listen to a lot of music around those times when I'm writing. I don't listen to podcasts on my walks or anything. It's just silence. Like even on the subway, I can ride the subway for an hour and just sit there. I find that those kinds of moments of stillness and almost boredom is the best times for when things come to me. Also, sometimes when I'm really tired. And there are also times, this might sound weird, but you know that place when you're like not fully asleep, but not fully awake? There are times where music, it's more so music rather than lyrics, comes to me during those times. And if I like wake up and remember them, I'll record them in like my voice memos on my phones. But there's been plenty of times where I have like musical snippets that just like come to me when I'm like half awake, which is very weird. But yeah.
That's so cool. I think
Yeah.
that's such a great metaphor of it's a door, it's a creative door that you walk through and you get access to it for a certain period of time. Like I
Yeah.
like the way you worded it. It sounds very mystical, magical, which it is. Like creativity is that, right? So that's really cool that you're saying it's like you have access to some other, realm within yourself or within our world where you can then access all these cool ideas and then kind of bring them back down to earth and then turn them into music.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because like sometimes I'll get ideas and I'm like, oh, this is so good. Is this really just something I made up? Is this something that exists already? Because like sometimes it just feels, I guess, a bit impostery. Imposter syndrome, like, oh, like how did that just like come to you? You know what I mean? Like that's actually really cool. That sounds really good. Like how does that? I mean, there's a lot of things where I'm like, oh, that sounds really good, and then like a day later, I'm like, wow, that sounds like crap. But yeah, there are times where I'm like, wow, this sounds really good, and I think it actually is really good. So it's kind of funny how it works in that way.
Well, that definitely leads into the neurological side of things. And where do these ideas come from? Are they like given to you by your mind or by the world, or how do they manifest in your mind? And ultimately, we can't even fully answer that question, but it reminds me actually of a movie called Marley about Bob Marley's life. And in it, the actor who plays him is playing a song. And the woman who plays his wife asks him, "When did you write that?" And his answer in the movie and in real life was, "My whole life." So it was like every moment led him to that moment to be able to play that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess just a myriad. Yeah, a myriad of experiences, of emotions. Especially if you're in a particularly like emotionally volatile state, like if you're really sad, if like through a breakup and stuff, that is when a lot of creativity flows, but not always, it doesn't always have to be like emotional turmoil in which my songs are created. It kind of can stem from everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you cover in your music a variety of different emotions. Like you're saying your new EP is exploring different shades of sadness, but then you also
Yeah.
have very upbeat songs. And
Yeah.
that's cool. That actually leads me to ask you then about key and pitch in songs.
Mm.
So yeah, when you talk about the different feelings in a song, what type of volume, tone, energy is evoking different emotions within
Yeah.
us? And it's cool that key and pitch are purely psychological phenomenon, that they're not objective, they're subjective. So they're based on our own mental schemas of what we associate happy to be usually in a major key, right? And sad
Yeah.
to be in a minor key. So I'm curious, when you are creating music, are you trying to evoke certain emotional responses? Does it happen naturally, or do you kind of leave that up to the listener?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is great about it being subjective. You can have a note, like you can take like an A note, for example, and it will sound totally in harmony depending on what key you're in versus out of harmony or kind of off, depending, again on what key. It's kind of cool in that music has like this zero barrier entry point in that you can have a song and even if the lyrics are in a language that you don't speak, you can get the vibe of the song if it's a sad song, if it's a happy song, just depending on if it's, again, in like a major key versus a minor key. There was this quote that used to sit in my room in high school that said, "Music is what feelings sound like." And I think it's very cool how music can be such a universal language for everyone. even if it has lyrics or not, if you understand the lyrics or not, it kind of can speak to everyone. It's funny because the way of measuring like frequency and vibration in music is through hertz. It's that, again, that unit of measurement that measures the frequency of those sound waves. There are plenty of musicians and scientists, philosophers going back like all the way to ancient Greek times that have expressed that 432 hertz is a way of tuning that is more aligned with the universe and the natural, I guess, hum of the universe. And they have said that it has a lot of healing benefits for the human body. It creates a lot of calming physiological responses. The way our standard way of tuning in the current age is typically 440 hertz, which is, if you listen to 430, like a note played at 432 hertz versus 440, you can hear a difference. One does feel a lot more calm than the other. And there are plenty of musicians who argue around using 432 tuning because instead of aggravating physiological symptoms in the body the way that 440 hertz does, 432 is supposed to be that sweet spot. I just think that's a really cool part about music that quite literally can be healing.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So do you tune into that? Oh, pardon the pun. That was great.
That's a good question. I do not. I use the standard way of tuning. It would be a really cool thing to explore. Again, it can get pretty technical. And I would probably have to collaborate with my mixing engineer and mastering engineer to kind of make that happen. I don't even know if certain platforms like Spotify and stuff, they might change it anyways just to be more aligned with their platform and the sounds that they have standardized in their systems. I haven't really explored that personally within my own music, but I definitely think it would be something cool to explore. I know that a lot of rap music also uses it, which is interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, that would probably be my last guess at what is using that frequency. That's
Agreed. Yeah,
very
I don't
cool.
know.
Huh.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to my own music, I don't really use tuning as a way to provoke certain emotions. I think it's more so I don't really plan out the keys in advance. So I usually have to figure out what keys each of my songs are in after I write them. But I usually have a sense of if it's a major or minor, just depending on the chords that I'm playing. But yeah, obviously, having minor notes in a major song can have a sense of surprise. Having a lot of minor chords evoke more sad sounds. But I don't really plan it out in advance. I kind of just let it flow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So there's no focus on what's the outcome going to be. You're just doing what feels right for you.
Yes.
And then you're checking later, oh, what was that? Right. So I think that's even more creative, right? Because you're just saying, I'm going to follow what feels right for me, and then I'm going to figure it out after.
Exactly. I think a really important part of the creative process, and this goes for everything, like not just music, you can't create and edit at the same time. You have to
such a good point.
And then you can edit. So even if you're creating, even if you're like, oh, this is probably going to sound like total crap, you just do it. You just do it. You can edit it later. You don't know where that journey is going to take you. It's very much about the process as it is about the final destination. And you should never limit yourself in your creative endeavors until after. You can edit after. Don't create and edit at the same time. Yeah.
Such an important piece of advice for sure. And that leads right into this idea of flow. So flow is a state of mind where you're fully present, fully immersed in the moment. It's basically another word for saying you're in the zone or you're being mindful. You're just fully present. And that's what you're describing there when you're saying focus on what's in front of you. Don't focus on the outcome, because if we focus too much on the outcome, we're going to allow the editing to get in the way of just creating in the moment. So I'm curious, when you're in the zone, how do you experience this flow state? And does it feel different when you're writing versus performing versus getting that first initial spark where you walk through that quote unquote door of creativity?
Yeah. So I would say for each of my experiences, let's say songwriting versus producing versus performing, they're all very different flow states. So when I'm songwriting, I can get into flow states where I just, write the whole song at once. That's happened many times. There are times where I just get bits and pieces again. And so it doesn't always have to be a flow state, I think, when it comes to writing songs. However, when it comes to producing songs, it pretty much has to be a flow state. I will not sit down and produce unless I know I have at least 2 to 3 hours of producing time. I think because producing requires not only so much focus in listening, but also in observing. You have to observe the screen in front of you and the program and where to click and whatever, sound waves. It's very much in a flow state. There are plenty of times where I'm producing where I don't even know how long it's been, or I'll like get up to go get water or something and it's dark outside. Like it's very much in that zone. I will go and get a snack and not even realize it's been like 4 hours and I haven't eaten anything.
Wow.
And I think it's completely opposite when I'm performing. So when I'm producing, it's very much in the zone, unaware of everything else. When I'm performing, it's very much aware of everything. I'm aware of the crowd. I'm aware of the vibes from both the crowd and also my bandmates. I'm aware of what notes I'm playing. I feel like you get kicks of adrenaline that really make you focus on everything and take in all of those different variables. Whereas, yeah, when I'm producing, it's very much just me tunnel vision with my computer for hours, and with the sounds I'm hearing and trying to correct. So yeah, it's very different along the way. Yeah, I know that you have a lot of creative endeavors. Obviously, your paintings behind you. How is flow state for you and those creative processes, like painting or even writing podcast episodes?
Oh, thanks for turning it back to me. Love this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, first to comment on what you said, I think that's really interesting that you're noticing the different types of flow states, that it doesn't look the same in each avenue for you.
Yeah.
And that one, like when you're producing, you lose time, like you lose sense of space and time, essentially. You're just totally present to it. And then when you're performing, you're more analytical of what's happening around you and tuning into just the space and what you're doing in that moment. For me, as you're saying that, I actually was reflecting on your producing sounds like my painting. When I'm in the zone painting, I don't know what time it is. I forget to drink water or pee or eat, which is not always good.
Bathroom breaks are important because, been there.
Because you just get so lost in it. And it's also, that's the fun of it too. Like, I think the way people can get lost in a book or get lost in a movie, or you just lose time. And it's a nice way to lose time because you're also doing something, like you're outputting something. And so it's fun. I like that part of it. But because of that, same as you said, you don't produce unless you have at least a certain amount of hours to do that.
Yeah.
If I'm painting, I need to have a day. Otherwise, I'm not going to start it because I'm just going to eat into all the other things I need to do that day.
Yeah, you have to be able to get in that flow state to really have that creative zone.
It's cool. I think that any type of creative endeavor, like you said, when you're just focusing on the moment, not the outcome, then there's less anxiety too, because you can just be present and non-judgmental of your ideas as they're coming up versus thinking of the judgment of the other people, right? Like maybe when you're performing, you're aware of other people's perception of you, but you can't have that same type of mindset when you're creating, or you'll never create anything.
Exactly. It's kind of cool too, like when you're in this flow state, you're creating, and then you step away. And when you come back to it after a certain period of time, like after, even if it's 24 hours or a week or something, and you're like, oh, wow, I created this. Time away, it helps keep things in perspective when you come back to it, as if, do I actually like this? Am I actually proud of this? Is this something I want to put out? Is this something that I am not proud of? It's kind of interesting how time really plays a role in that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That if we get too stuck in the flow state, then everything starts to blur together, and we lose sight of what we're actually creating. So that's definitely important to take pause and then to come back to it. So something I also find interesting about music is that we have often heard the idea that the right brain is creative and the left brain is more logistic and practical. But
Yeah.
it is way oversimplifying it. It's not to say that that's not true to some degree, but it's cool how music is not just right brain, that music actually lights up multiple parts of both hemispheres.
Yeah, it's like
Whereas,
math.
right, right.
Yeah.
Where something like language is more located in one hemisphere than the other. It's interesting what lights up what part of the brain.
It's really cool to hear that music hits a bunch of different parts of the brain, because the only
Mhm.
other thing that I know that does that is also dreams. When you dream, it's not
Mhm.
just one area of the brain, it's a lot of different areas that light up. I'm actually equal parts left and right brained, as according to a couple of quizzes.
Yeah.
Those quizzes, who actually knows, right? But it is funny because music is very much a creative process, but it's again rooted in math, time signature, beats per minute.
Mm.
That's all ratios and math. It's very cathartic. And I know a lot of songwriters say this, but it is very cathartic to write a song and get your emotions out. It's kind of like journaling, I guess. It
Mhm.
has that same effect for, I know a lot of people journal to kind of make sense of their emotions. A lot of times I find for myself, I will write a song and I don't really know what it's about or know what's inspiring it until after it's done and I'm reflecting on it and I'm realizing,
Mhm.
oh, that was coming from like a breakup that I actually went through like a year ago that I guess I hadn't fully processed and stuff like that. So for me, it's very cathartic writing music. Creating music, I think, is a completely emotional process. It's not just processing emotions that you've felt through experiences. It also invokes a lot of emotions along the way. For example, there are plenty of times where I'm producing and I become very frustrated
Mhm.
with the program that I'm using, or something's not sounding the way I want it to. You have a complete myriad of different emotions when you are creating music. And one of the things that I love about music is it's very much about what you don't say is as equally as important as what you do say. I think
Mm.
a lot of meaning can be taken between the words and between the lyrics. And that's something that I really love. Like, you can have a completely emotional journey in a 3-minute song as you would a novel of a book. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that emotional journey can differ from person to person depending on their own experience and what they're projecting onto the song. So it's one of the things I love about music and poetry, because poetry is all about what you don't say. Yeah.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And I like that you say it's such an emotional process, the process of creating, whether it's the content or the procedures behind it, like getting
Exactly. Yeah.
frustrated with the procedures. And then you can see how there's different parts of your mind that's engaging, right? To your point, there's a lot of math involved. And so that would be
Yeah.
using your quote unquote left brain. And then you're using more of your right brain for the emotional side of it. And then back to the left brain. Like, they're both such a beautiful example of how they're
Both
both
working.
engaging, yeah, at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah. And there's nothing like when you get something right, or when you're just like, oh, this is it. Like when I'm towards the end of a song, or I write the perfect riff, like, oh, I've been trying to write a riff for this for like a week and now I've got it on lock. That feeling, it's literally like a high.
Yeah.
There's nothing where you just feel so like, yeah, I freaking nailed this, man. So it definitely is an emotional journey, because there's days where I'm producing where I'm like, this is the best song ever. This is everything. And then the next day I'll go be like, this is all wrong. I have to like cut everything out and start from scratch. It's like emotionally, can be emotionally exhausting, but like also in the best way, because the final product is something that you're really proud of and you've gone through all those things.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Mhm.
so very much emotionally invested.
Yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
reminds me of a quote, actually. I was watching this documentary about U2, and Bono had said that music and songwriting is heart surgery. I was like, oh,
Ooh.
yeah, that makes sense. You're basically so vulnerable, opening yourself up, that it's a painful but beautiful experience. And that I liked how
Yeah.
he said it's heart surgery, because it's so emotionally investing. And I don't want to say
Yeah.
taxing because it's obviously so rewarding, but it's just, it takes a lot, right? And then you get to look back at it and say, like you said before, wow, I made that.
Yeah, you definitely have to be brave. I think it's kind of like relationships in that way too, even friendships, relationships where the best kinds of relationships and the ones that have the most sturdy foundations are the ones where you know you can be vulnerable with that person,
Mm-hmm.
and share vulnerable experiences and bond over them. Those are the most solid kinds of relationships are built through those really vulnerable states. And I think it's the same way as Bono was
Mm-hmm.
saying. It's heart
Yeah.
surgery.
Heart surgery. Oh, I love that you
Yeah.
tie it to relationships. It's so true. It makes me think
Yeah.
of our relationship, our love
Yeah,
story.
no,
But
it's very true. I mean,
yeah.
you can have surface level friends, which are great, but you really build bonds when you have those meaningful conversations and those
Hmm.
connections.
Yeah,
And those often come from vulnerability.
for
Yeah.
sure. So something else I wanted to ask was your thoughts on the music industry and your sense of creative control, because we
Mhm.
see it time and time again, the pop star that blows up and all of a sudden their producer has taken over their life and their creative
Yeah.
direction. And so I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that, being independent right now?
Yeah. So I love being an independent artist. You very much hit the nail on the head in that because I produce my own songs, I have found that through this process, producing really helps shape the song. It is like that translation between your idea and the kind of vibe that you have in your mind and what it is in the final product. It's very much, I would say, as important as songwriting because it can completely change the way a song feels. I love having that control. However, producing does take a lot of time. And if I was to grow, I don't know if I could keep up with the demand of having to put out songs all the time and having them produced. Currently, it takes me at least like a month and a half, 2 months to produce one
Mm,
song.
wow.
So I have a lot of fears around giving up that creative control to someone else because it could completely change the vision that I have for these songs that I'm writing. Yeah, but I think it all comes down to finding the right people to work with, like I have with my band, finding that way of expressing yourself and being honest with them so that you can collaborate to the best of both your abilities to get to the vision that you have in your head, which is
Mhm.
sometimes very hard to communicate. It's a lot easier when it's you doing it all yourself, but when there's someone else involved, it can get a little tricky. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
That totally makes sense. And
Yeah.
the reason I asked too is because our conversation today is all about creativity and what does it
Yeah.
look like to express yourself and what are the emotions tied to music and making sure that you're never losing that and that's always going to be something that's yours and no one can take that
Yeah.
from you. And I think, knowing you,
Yeah.
I don't think you'd ever let someone come in and say, we're doing this, we're doing that. Like I
Yeah,
feel like
definitely not.
you're pretty
But it
true to yourself.
But it is scary. Like, there are plenty of stories where you sign a contract and that creative control is no longer yours. And
Mhm.
the reasons that you started making music in the first place and are now in the hands of someone else. And it kind of defeats the point of being an artist if the decisions that you make are in the hands of someone else. Or
Mhm.
the decisions that you should be making are in the hands of someone else, I should say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, I'm very, very curious because you and I have only got close over the past 4 years. So I didn't really know the pre-musician Lianna. Not that you've always been a musician, clearly.
Yeah.
But you really put yourself out there. And
Yeah.
that takes a lot of
Pre-public. Yeah.
public, yeah,
Yeah.
pre-public. That really takes a lot of courage and like you said, bravery. So I'm curious how doing that, how being so vulnerable and taking that leap and having the courage to share who you are has influenced who you are outside of being a musician.
Yeah, that's a good question. My North Star that I use, and it always helps me put things into perspective, is that we are all going to die.
I love that.
And it's true. Like, there's so many people who get caught up with the hustle and bustle of life, they forget that we are all going to die. And I remind myself of that all the time. And that kind of helps create bravery. Because when you realize, oh, one day I'm going to die, this person I'm afraid of judging me, they're going to die one day. It kind of helps you say, oh, well, F it, I'm just going to do it. So I think, again, like in high school, I was very nervous to share. And I think part of that came from, teenager hormones, body changing, all that stuff. But when you really realize what you want to do, and I've always known I wanted to do music, and realize that, hey, I'm going to die one day, it really helps you to say, well, just do it. Just do it.
This is why you and I are friends, because literally, it's funny, in the last episode of 2024, I talked about growth moment for me, which was sitting down to record my very first podcast. And I had stuck big pieces of paper up on the wall with affirmations or sayings on them. And the one that really got me was, we're all going to die anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it definitely helps. It definitely helps
keep things in perspective, and it helps keep you in the path of doing what you want, because one day you're going to die. So might as well do what you want.
Might as well do it.
Hopefully that it's, it's all legal and whatever. But
yeah, we can't use that as an excuse for bad behavior, but we can use it as an excuse for
following
your
dreams.
For following your dreams. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Lianna, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to release this episode, and I really appreciate you just being your wonderful, vulnerable, talented self with us. Thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying the podcast, I invite you to participate in a Growth Zone challenge. I invite you to take a moment, a second, a gap in your day right now and share this episode with 2 other people. Thank you for minding the gaps with me. I'll see you next time on the journey out of our comfort zones and into our growth zones.